And we're here today to have two, I think, are going to be fascinating panel discussions that I'm going to moderate. First, I'd like to thank Hedwige and Cécile, who are going to be in the first panel. Hedwige is our current chair, and Cécile is was a chair and founding member of EWOB. So this will be an interesting panel of the history and the future of EWOB. And for the second part, we have Delia Mensitieri, who's from our executive committee, and she runs our research area. So this is going to be fascinating to see what the data shows in terms of progress, or in some cases not progress, in gender equality. So please continue to write in the chat. And also, if you have questions, we're going to be taking them during the time. We might not get to all the questions. We will try very hard, but please write them in the chat as we go. And we have two chat moderators. We have Orhun and we have Marcella, who are going to help us bring those questions into our discussion, because we want this to be interactive. Before we get started, just a few quick words on what's happening today in terms of our guidelines. This is a public event, so it's not private. So that means Chatham House rules don't apply. It means that whatever is said can go public. We're recording it. If you'd rather not anything in your chat or any comments you make be public, please write in the Zoom to European Women on Boards. You can find it in the chat, Zoom chat, and then you can say you don't want anything to be attributed to you. As I already said, it's going to be recorded. And so also we're doing this on a connection basis, an interactive basis. Is not for promoting your own business. So please write in the chat questions, comments, things that you learn. And now we will get started. So let's kick off. So the first thing we want to, as I said, is we're going to have a first panel with Cécile and Hedwige. I currently work with Hedwige as the chair. I'm the CEO of European Women on Boards. And Cécile, welcome, also is the founding member of EWOB. So we want to kick it off to Hedwige and Cécile to answer some questions on the past of EWOB and also the future. So first, Cécile, welcome and thanks for joining us. And I know you're also recovering from a cough, so let me know if you need to take a break. But thanks for joining us. Let me ask you a question about the past of EWOB, because it's 10 years almost, December 5th. So reflecting on the last decade, what inspired you to found EWOB? And then what changes have you witnessed in the organization since its very inception?
Well, 10 years flies, so it's not so long ago in my memory, but first and foremost, I think we were convinced of the value to create a talent pool of boardable women. After co-creating Women on Board in Belgium, we felt the need to create a similar project at European level, because corporate governance is an international topic. Business and corporations cross borders, and so should women on boards. The only way to achieve this, because we were not going to found a chapter in each country, was to create that national organization should get together to create a European alliance. And at the same time, the European Women on Boards Directive, which was proposed by the European Commission and approved by the European Parliament, was blocked at the level of the European Council. And we felt the need to support women on boards across Europe. So our vision was to achieve a European-wide premier network of women on board organizations, and with them to participate to the construction of and to the debate around a more sustainable and diverse European economy. So I guess our journey was quite successful, but thanks to the commitment of all the founding members. Because believe me, getting an international organization off the ground, and a national one is not easy, but an international one from scratch and giving it shape and form requires quite a lot of efforts. But we had faith, and it's been so much worth it. Indeed, in 2 or 3 years, we were present in about 10 European countries with the support of large corporate sponsors and the funding obtained from the European Commission. We launched the first gender index study based on the STOXX 600. We organized some mega events, one in particular at Tour et Taxi. We organized bespoke seminars to get our members to know each other and to connect. And we built a few cross-border, cross-sector, first-in-class mentoring programs, as well as the beginning of a knowledge platform. So basically, I think that we set the foundations of European Women on Boards, but with the hope to provide it with a solid ground for future development. And then we pass the torch to the next, chair and the next generation to lead the show.
No, great. Thank you, Cécile, for that background. And apologies, my female cat wants to join this celebration too. So I am trying to convince her not to walk across my laptop. Okay, thank you for that, though. It's great to hear the history and what you did to start this fantastic organization. But I now want to turn over to Hedwige. Hedwige, you took over as EWOB's most recent chair 2 years ago. What inspired you to lead EWOB, and then what have been the achievements that you're most proud of in this last time in your tenure?
Thank you so much for asking, Kristen, this wonderful question. And thank you also for Cécile, because she has set the scene. And the story of EWOB is the story of many, many men and women who have been helping, who have been playing a role. And it was the same for me. I was at the Turn and Taxi event. I remember very well in a totally different capacity. I could feel that vibe. And then I moved outside abroad. But then in 2020, in COVID, I really wanted to follow some training, like many of you want to follow training. And I followed the course. I followed the C-level program together with Kristen. And one year after they were looking for additional board members, I just applied, and it is something we all should do. I applied, I had a process, a selection process, and I was chosen, just like Kristen, to take on some of the big challenges that the board had at the time. So in 2020, 2021, it was not the most easy period for EWOB, a little bit of stress financially, a lot of things that the board wanted to do, but they needed new people. And that's also something good at board level, that you renew and you ask people to add some experience and some work, a lot of work, because this is the work of a lot of volunteers. So we built the individual membership program. Kristen and others developed the program, C-level board readiness program. We hired a man on the board who helped us with the European Commission to negotiate and to lobby on the EU directive. And we also started the big efforts to really roll out this organization to the 25 countries we are in. So I would like to pay tribute to all the people that have made this organization so successful as it is now, and also recognize that we have had some ups and downs. It's never accomplished, it's never finished. So this is the work of many people who work at different levels. So many people here in the room who are volunteering, who have been working at board level, advisory board level, and being part of the membership. The thing I'm most proud of, Kristen, is that this is a very unique organization. There are not that many organizations that really have that kind of fever, that kind of intention, that kind of passion to realize something, to change the world, and at the same time is growing so fast, so professionally, and being so efficient. So this is, I think, the thing I'm most proud of. And of course, we are far from finished.
Well, thank you, Hedwige. And yes, you tell the history of how we both started around the same time and met each other. And I think that that's really where we get our energy, is the hundreds of volunteers, present and past, who have given their energy and passion to making EWOB what it is today. So, thank you for giving us kind of your perspective on the last few years and the future. Cécile, I'll go back to you. How do you see the evolution of gender diversity and inclusion in leadership roles over the past 10 years?
Well, I think that a lot of positive developments took place, at least in the Western world. Statistics show that substantially increased participation of women on boards of directors, with variation, of course, depending on by country, the adoption of quota laws or not. But also thanks to the initiatives of the corporate sector and the improvement of corporate governance. Traded companies, I think in particular, because they are also subject to the scrutiny of regulators, investors, and so on. but large companies and even smaller ones that are engaged in the same trajectory, they embark on diversity and inclusion journeys with reporting and targets. And last but not least, the European directive was finally adopted. So that's a lot of positive developments, but nevertheless, we are far from gender equality on boards. If we look at the global picture of all board of directors in all sectors, all sizes, and so on, there is still a lot to do there. And we are even less so when looking at executive leadership, which is still very largely male-dominated across sectors, with some sectors even less well-served than others. And this is not a question of capability. So yes, in my view, there is still a lot to do.
No, thank you. I think that we have to say there's been progress, but it's been slow in some cases. And, but the directive was passed. That's the reason EWOB was formed, as you said before, Cécile. But now it's the implementation. It's connecting, it's a transparency in board positions and C-suite, and connecting the women that are ready for those positions with the openings. So yeah, it's good. It's a good message that we all have a lot of things to do in EWOB for the future. Hedwige, same question to you. Anything to add on?
Yes, I fully agree with everything that Cécile has been saying, and we have, of course, been able to show this in numbers. It's so important to be able to show that the countries in Europe that took actions, Delia will be able to explain this as well, they have seen a lot of progress. Progress in the board doesn't mean you have progress at executive committee. And what is so important with this directive is that we now have been advocating for change across Europe. This is really amazing that we will see progress across all the 27 countries. And we know that actually Norway and the UK, that are not part of the European Union, have seen major progress as well. What we see in our working group is that we now have to move one step further. Of course, we will start with the listed companies. It's also important to see what is happening at state-owned companies in some countries that go very, very well as well, non-listed companies. And then I would like to also say that for us, diversity in general is important. So it's not only about getting the gender equality in the talent pool. We aim for the talent pool of 1,000 women. We really want to see underrepresented groups as well. So for us, diversity of talent is very important, and it's a package. We do not want to aim for a new elite. Diversity of talent is key.
No, thank you, Hedwige. And I think most people here know that we have a DEI working group in EWOB to do that, to basically make sure we have more representation in our membership and our programs from all underrepresented groups. So we'll hear more about that in the future. Hedwige, to continue on the theme of what you were talking about in terms of shaping politics and policies, what role have you seen that EWOB has played in influencing politics, regional development concerning gender diversity and leadership positions?
Yes, so EWOB has been one of the very important actors. We have to acknowledge that European law is extremely complicated. It's really very complex, and Cécile knows it. She was at the start. Many people have tried. Many people have tried. What I actually learned is that you need to be persistent, resilient, and just keep trying. Keep trying, and also find allies. And that is something that I learned, that others learned. I think that we have been successful in taking on again the action, taking on again the action plan, and be very bold. We have been enormously bold in taking action, in negotiating, in reaching out to politicians, to heads of states, to go to the parliament, to ask for conversations. So this is a very bold plan, and of course it was not only our effort, it was a joint effort, but it needs courage, it needs individual initiatives, and it needs networks like EWOB. We were the only person, the only party in the parliament who could speak on behalf of all women, who could speak apart from parties, apart from countries, and that was a very important element, and we played this card.
I sometimes say, Hedwige, that I think EWOB is the great connector. I mean, we're really connecting, the countries, but also women within the countries across borders. And I think that's one of the great benefits we play. Cécile, do you have comments to add on in terms of the shaping and influencing the policies in gender diversity leadership positions?
Well, I fully agree with you, Hedwige. What I might add is that in the early stage of EWOB, one of our achievements was to really get the attention and the recognition of the European Commission, which allowed us to participate in the debates. And that's not a small thing, because when we got the first grant, we were together with many other organizations, more or less in the field of diversity. And we were just born. We were not. We did not have 5 years of existence, so we couldn't get any pre-funding. We had to find, So, but we were one of the few projects that started together with all the others and achieved everything that we said we would achieve. And that got, and the quality of what we did and the quality of all the people involved, I think is very impressive. And is kind of role modeling, so that we show that there is this, we are not just advocating for women because we are women, we are advocating for women because we are more than half of the population, we are more than half of the university students, we are educated, we are willing, we are motivated. And I think this kind of network, like European Women on Board and all the national organizations, is just demonstrating to the wider public that we are there. There is no excuse where to find them; they are there. So I think that's also one of the achievements of European Women on Boards on the international scene.
Well, thank you, Cécile. Yeah, definitely. And I think that those are the continuing challenges that we have to work on. I think now would be a nice time to take a couple questions from the chat, and then we'll go back to some set questions. So I turn over to Orhun. Orhun, are there some questions in the chat that you could highlight, ask to Hedwige and Cécile?
Hello, yes. Christina asked to both Hedwige and Cécile, how solid do they think the progress we made in Europe is, and what are the greatest risks at reversing some of the positive accomplishments we have had, and as we've seen in other geographies?
Well, you cannot have more solid than an EU directive. So it's a very, very strong instrument, of course. We have a technical working group that is also looking at the way of suspension, etc., etc. We are present in 25 countries with organizations who are following what is happening in the countries, dealing with governments. I will go to Greece tomorrow to discuss with the government there. We discuss with each country, Finland, all the countries are here in this room. So it's never finished until it's finished, of course, but we have a very solid base. We have an organization that is well recognized. We have a solid organization, and we just are getting organized. So that's the best you can do. And then, of course, it's a play. It will require thousands and thousands of companies to change. Of course, there will be resistance. You cannot aim for very big change while you would not expect resistance. But the question is how to find more allies than you have resistance, and that's exactly what we are going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree, and I think that the progress is solid. In the meantime, not only the European directive, but many more countries have adopted quota laws. I must say that from the beginning, and at the beginning, certainly European Women on Board was not advocating for quotas. We were kind of quota agnostic because each organization within the network had different points of view. So we were just advocating for more participation, be it quotas, be it targets, and demonstrating the size and the strengths of the bench strengths that we had with our network. But I think what is helping as well, besides all these initiatives, is also the growing importance of the ESG discussions at board levels, with the G of governance, and S and E. I think we play a role in this area as women. I think that also the good corporate governance now it is a matter of fact that a good governance is an inclusive and diverse governance. And so I think that besides the laws which have to be enforceable, but there is also this movement, this movement to have more corporate responsibility is also helping to, I would say, to keep everything together.
No, thank you, Cécile. I think we hope that everyone understands that. I think sometimes we find not everyone does, but the research does show that more gender diverse teams make more ethical decisions, and that really impacts, as you said, the governance.
Well, I just said, if I can give one example, yes. A piece of work that landed on my email today is a research by some consultants regarding the remuneration packages of CEOs, and they found that the right balance is mostly achieved in the boards where there is a large proportion of women. So it's just one concrete example. I was very astonished to see that, but it's, I think there would be other examples. I think we bring a specific approach sometimes, more risk-minded, more ethical sometimes, not afraid of not trying to make friends. So yes, I think it's not that we are better, but because we sometimes come with a different angle, and that's good.
Exactly, Cécile. There was a HBR, Harvard Business Review article that I just saw today that was talking exactly that, saying that women tend to challenge a bit the status quo and not feel shy about maybe disagreeing or bringing a different perspective. So thank you for that. Let's ask one more question before we go back to our set questions. Orhun, is there a second one in the chat?
Yes. Ekta Soni asks, what's the next 5-year plan of growth?
Yes, so of course we had the 4 objectives that are nearly all done. So a talent pool of 1,000 women ready and eager to move to C-level and board position. The EU directive is done, and now implementation. Be present in 25 countries, and then having those allyships, extending allyships with companies and research. Of course, this is up to the board to decide, but what we agreed at the board so far is to continue on this same vein. And so we'll continue to increase the talent pool and really make sure that all those women are much better prepared and use the networking to move to a board position. In the implementation of the directive, we will continue the work. It's not done. We have the implementation in the law that has to be done by the end of 2024. And then we have a next target, and that's mid-2026, where the 40% needs to be realized. In terms of countries, we would like to move from 25 to 30 so that we have all European countries covered. We still miss a couple, and that's also the work of Kristen and the executive committee, which is doing a great job in this. And then I think we still have a lot of things to do in terms of creating those links with companies, with executive search firms. We have a couple of them in this room, many friends that we have made in the last couple of years, and I'm sure we can do many more. So companies that want to have change, executive search firms eager to extend their talent pool and also working on having the best candidate and moving on with what is needed from their clients. And then I would say male allies in general. It's such an important topic, and it's get that message right. What can we ask? We have 40% men in our board. We are very much looking into it. We have done a workshop about male allyship. We are working with other organizations. We have a specialist within our board on male allyship, and that's so important. We have to bond, join forces, and of course you cannot convince everyone. That's not what we want, but you need to make sure that this is a movement that is actually embedded in other changes, societal changes, and that you actually work on something positive, a positive contribution. We want better governance, better companies, and better society.
Thank you so much. It was really insightful. Thank you.
Before we go on talking more about the EWOB's future, I want to bring in a question from Chala, because she asked, if you could change one thing on this 10-year journey, what would you change, or what would you have done differently, and why? So I'm turn over to Cécile first. Anything you would have changed or done differently, Cécile?
I was coughing, so I muted
Oh, sorry,
myself.
I caught you at the wrong time.
What would I have done differently? I think in doing EWOB, I did already things differently than I did at Women on Board Belgium. For example, in the funding, because funding is key in an organization, because you need, if you have the funding, then you can concentrate on the projects. And we went for big funding, big money. In our first years of existence, we had 240,000 euros from the European Commission, plus, and you always have to find equivalent sponsorships. And instead of having small sponsors, I went for big sponsors. We had Sodexo and we had PwC, and our sponsorship contracts were 50,000 per year. And so instead of managing many small sponsors, we were managing big sponsors, and it was co-creation, because they were sharing. There were companies that were really involved in D&I, and they were sharing their strategies to get more women at all levels in their organization. So it was a mutual benefit, and not only a financial benefit. So I think going for big achievement, going for ambitious goals, and therefore finding important, the necessary funding for that. So, and set the goals first, and the money will follow. I mean, if you think big, you will find the means.
I like that.
I think that's what we did, and what I would have done differently, and I think that EWOB is doing it now, is to be more inclusive, less protective of each organization, member organization. I think it's a field where collaboration is very important. Nobody owns the topic. It concerns all women. As I said, more than 50% of the population. So all the actors in the field, we should find a way somehow to include them, which EWOB is doing now. And also to have this individual membership. We were a network of organizations, and that was the vision we had at the time. It was perhaps okay to begin with, but I think we need the individual participation and to make it feel so that members feel the importance of EWOB, and not just an umbrella organization or network of organizations. So I think these two things are important, and I think that they have been captured by the new leadership. So that's fine.
Sorry, I was in mute. Thank you, Cécile. That's one of the arguments that we want to remove, where people say it sometimes, I'd like to have more women on my board or C-suite, but I can't find women. I can't find talented and ready women. So I think that individual membership, our talent pool, is key to eliminating that argument. Hedwige, let me turn over to you with the same question.
Yes, I don't think I have anything to add about what we should have done differently. I can only say, what can we do now? And I'm rather looking at the future than looking back on the past.
Okay, well, good. Let's go to another question that we had already planned, and I'll start with you, Hedwige. As a senior leader with a lot of experience globally, and also with you, Cécile, what advice would you give aspiring women leaders who aim to make meaningful impact in their career and organization?
Yes, one of the biggest lessons learned for myself was, in the first 20 years of my career, I really thought that I had to do it all by myself. So that was how I was raised. You have to work, you have to prove, you have to show that you are a leader, you have to show your ambition. And it was only by a coach and a mentor that I had the chance to meet at some point that I learned that if you want to move to an executive career and certainly to a board career, you have actually to find buy-in, to build buy-in, to be also seen by others, and to use your environment and your organization to thrive and to move forward. And this is something that we've also tried to encapsulate in what EWOB is. It's not only about you waiting for a magic offer to happen. You can be the driver of your own career. You can do it, but you have to use your network. You have to use help. And as much as you would like to give and to contribute, it's also important to be able to take, to get inspired, and to ask advice and listen to others. And this is really something that with EWOB we can offer for all women. And this is actually my dream come true, that with all the experience of all the women in this room, part of EWOB and the many men helping us, we can actually help each woman in this room to move her own career forward and have impact in her life, impact to the company, and impact to society.
Great. Over to you, Cécile. Do you have some things to add on?
Yeah, I think I will say the same thing in different words. I firmly believe that each woman has the potential to achieve its ambition, not easily perhaps, but if you believe in yourself, people will believe in you. And so I think in the same way as Hedwige, that women and men also, by the way, should look for sponsors and allies in building their career. I think that we as women, we must take more time to network between women, but not only. I think that in my career, as Hedwige, I was from, I don't know about Hedwige, but in my generation, at least, we were patient, we were hardworking. Well, we moved our career quite quickly, but still, I mean, we had this sense of proving ourselves, as Hedwige explained. So I think we need to network, and we also should make ourselves known, not only inside the organization, not be too hierarchical, but also to the outside world. Let's not be afraid to shine in organizations, I would say federations or you know, some business circles. That's very important, I think. And then the last piece of advice is one that I received more than 35 years ago when I started my management career, is that to every problem, there is a solution. So do not try to solve the problems before they arise, because in the end, you'll just be fine. You will find a solution. And when I was younger, I was thinking, oh my God, how am I was working for an American company, traveling and, you know, stretched with small children. And I was thinking, how am I going to cope? And at some point, I wanted to drop it. But I was told that, and in the end, it worked out. So yeah, I think that's an individual piece of advice. And again, like Hedwige said, I think that really organizations such as European Women on Boards are made for the members. It's really for giving and sharing. And so that's really the drive of the project.
And I think that's the real, you know, the strong benefit that we bring with EWOB that a lot of other organizations don't, because we're pan-European and we're a strong network of women advocating for other women, women and men advocating for other women. So let's talk about the future, Hedwige. She said, you want to look forward to the future. Let me ask you this question. You know well that the theme of our celebration is 2013 to 2033. So for the next 10 years. So looking ahead, what are your hopes and aspirations for EWOB and the broader landscape of gender equality in leadership?
So of course, I hope that EWOB will be able to create a movement. Is already a movement and will expand. What I also hope is that we will continue to bond and to increase that allyship. We have the networking, that was also one of the questions. It's really make that network work for you. So we have 25 organizations in all those countries, and they are creating change as well. We have 1,000 women all working on their career. We will, of course, build more partnerships with companies, with executive search firms. So I think that EWOB is the real example of how organizations of the future can be much more impactful. It's not about me, it's not about the board, it's about enabling change, it's about creating a network, it's about enabling actually all the other actors to move forward. So I hope that we will continue to be this movement, and that at some point in 10 years, it will just be a normal thing. It is just a corporate governance thing. As we would now say that having an audit committee, having financial resilience is a normal thing for companies. Having the best talent, having diversity at the board is just good governance. So I hope we will be, of course, much bigger than now, much more impactful, but actually just one of the partners of good governance in every country across Europe.
Cécile, do you want to add on? What are your hopes and wishes for EWOB?
When I hear that, I fully agree. I hope that, and sometimes, you know, even at Women on Board Belgium before, or European Women on Boards, I hear some people say, I hope that this organization doesn't need to exist anymore because it will be such a natural thing. Well, personally, I think it will always be needed because back to the question earlier, there is solid progress, but I think organizations like EWOB will be needed at least 10 or more years from now because there is still so much to do and because retropedaling is a risk. And so I think we must be vigilant around not losing any of the grounds that we have gained. But like Hedwige, I wish that it becomes so normal that when a woman is promoted, nobody even notices because it will be just natural, it will be an evidence. But in that way, I think that EWOB has been growing its international notoriety. And that's an area where I think EWOB can be even better known in the future. It's a label. I think it's gaining momentum. And my hope is that, yes, 10 years from now, everybody, and international notoriety is much more difficult to gain than national notoriety. So, yeah, I would say keep going in the right direction. It's wonderful.
No, I agree with you, Cécile, because I think about when Hedwige and I both joined EWOB around the same time, and the C-level program was September of 2020. Most of the people I would talk to when I would say European Women on Boards, they had no idea that we existed. And I that's sometimes the case, but less and less frequently. So I think that that's definitely a progress in the right direction. I think it's time to take some more questions from the chat. And I'm going to turn over to Marcella. Marcella, some questions that you want to ask Hedwige, Cécile, or both of them?
Yes, I mean, we've got lots of good questions. I think maybe continuing on from your theme here is that topic around male ally engagement. How Lorraine asked, you know, we have some fantastic and brave male allies. How can we engage them more? And that's really a question for both of you, Hedwige and Cécile.
Yes, so we did a workshop precisely on this, and also the Brussels binder, we are working with them as well, has published a report on male allyship. So we have quite interesting material. So we know that a lot of men actually are supportive. If you ask them, a lot of men want to help. Sometimes it is not well understood. So when we think about ally, we think that that person will help us forever or for finding a new job. So allyship is sometimes understood as helping you do the work, whereas sometimes men see it more as a transaction. They can help you out for something specific. So it's also about trying to find the right way how to ask, trying to see who to ask, try to see how you can facilitate actually the lots and lots of male allies that are present and that really want to help. So we will certainly do more with that workshop. We will also develop some concrete actions and actually also make it more easy for men to join. So there are several ideas that the board is going to look at how we can actually include more men. We are also very wary to have men as speaker, as ambassador, as a mentor, so many roles they can have, but it's a very good point. It's something we will work on continuously next year.
Thank you.
Marcel,
And I think for Cécile, would
going.
you like to comment as well?
Difficult to get the room full of men when you talk about women on boards or participation of women in economic decision making, but it's improving. And the smart men, they understand that it's smart to be there, and the smart men understand that they should be surrounded by or working with smart women, because it's, you know, the talent pool is bigger, and it's bringing. I personally, as a leader, I always thought that I was as big or strong as my team was. And that's really the key. I mean, it's not about women who are better. They are certainly not worse, but certainly there is a talent pool there that is worth tapping into. And if you don't, I mean, it's just you restrict yourself, I think, with the war for talent. And women will join and stay in organizations if the culture and the inclusion is real. And so the companies that are doing that will have a competitive advantage over the companies that don't do that. And it's visible already. Take, for example, the banking sector. You see that some banks, they have a clear strategy to have many women at the top. And those banks are thriving. Their image is better. It's also a good role modeling for the rest of the organization. And so it's all positive. That's, I think, you know, and then the other thing is, I would say, is that men sometimes are afraid to interact with women at work because they're just not comfortable what to say, how to behave. And I think we must help them feel comfortable talking to us and engaging with us, because we can talk business, we can be fun working with, and it's not you have to, because they are women, you know, this. So we should ease the connection, I think, between men and women at work in a professional way.
But I would like to refer to a conversation we had with Hagen on this point. It's also about how to use your network. And that's something that very often is discussed at EWOB events. How can you ask for something? How can you be specific? How can you be also very succinct? So just ask a concise, a precise answer. Also give something back. Be kind, be respectful, be professional. So how can you use your network and make that network work for you? Be it a man, be it a women. And perhaps we could do another event on this, but there is a lot of those things that we can learn and that we can exchange on.
Absolutely. Kristen, there is another question or two. Do we have time?
Please, yes, we do. Let's keep going.
Great. There's a question from Zainab for both Cécile and Hedwige. How can we expedite the implementation of the EU directive, especially in those countries where traction is low? And I might add on a second question from Helen Hesselman. Do you think we need to reach out to more shareholder groups to further drive that change? I think those are connected.
Yes, so perhaps I can explain in 2 words what we are doing. So we have representatives already from nearly every country that is actually in the EU. We have a working group, a technical working group, which is then coming together every 2 weeks to learn from the status in each country. We also have regular communications with the European Commission. Also, of course, because they are in charge of implementing and making sure that the directive is coming true. We also have contacts with the governments. Whenever we can, we go to the country and we have exchanges. We have people like Maria Sipila, who is our board member, who is directly engaging with the government herself. So we have actually representatives everywhere in every country, and we are actually also sharing technical details that are important for the countries to implement. So I don't think we can really speed up at this moment. The process needs to get its course. It's a legislative process. Every country needs to implement by the end of 2024. If they want an exception, they have to motivate the exception. But of course, this is the legislative process. Afterwards, it has to come into practice, and all those companies will have to act accordingly, adapt their selection processes, and making sure that the best candidate is chosen and the objectives are met. And that means that in parallel of this work, we are also working on the talent pools, making sure that we have talent in place, that women are more visible, working with executive search firms that will do the work as well, mobilizing companies. So this is really showing how EWOB and the different activities from EWOB make sense, because the one activity will help actually the other. Of course, with the women here in this room, the men and women in this room, we still have some countries where we miss some representatives. So all your work and your help in these technical committees is extremely important. And that's why it's so important to have a large talent pool and representatives in each country to help when need be.
Cécile, over to you. Do you want to add any?
Well, I think Hedwige and the team now is more in charge than me, but I think that the European directive is a great achievement in itself. It is a soft version of a quota law, but the mere fact that it exists is giving the opportunity to put the matter on the table and to help raise interest, it will help, I think, women on board organizations to start grow in countries where there isn't. And so it's a wonderful vector to talk about the issue and to find ways to make it happen more quickly. How to do it? I think that the work that Hedwige described is the right way to go. So I would not comment on that, but just use the directive as the opportunity to elevate the priority, to elevate the debate, and to get more things done to accelerate the implementation, I think. And then the other thing is, in general, and it's not because of the directive, but I think that more and more, as women grow in their roles, they can help each other. The network of women is becoming more and more interesting, because we have the power to, if I am contacted for a board position and either my portfolio is full or I am conflicted, I always give EWOB or women on board, or depending on the opportunity, and some names that I might know for myself. So this is also this snowball effect of more women in the pipeline, more women in board positions, more women in leadership positions. Is this women help women? I think is going to be very forceful.
No, I think I completely agree with you, Cécile. I mean, women advocating for women, and I think that's part of the network. If we don't want to have 5-10 women holding most of the board positions, you know, it needs to be shared, and also in the diversity that we're trying to achieve with different people of different generations, different cultural backgrounds, and race, ethnicity, definitely. We have time for a few more questions. Orhun, I turn over to you. Is there some questions in the chat that you would ask Hedwige and Cécile?
Yes, I think we talked about it a lot, but I still wanted to ask this. Lorraine Phillips asked, we have some fantastic and brave male allies. It sounds like I'm trying to compliment myself. How can we engage more with them?
So it's actually, how do we engage more, and is it engaging more of them, or actually telling them what they need to do? Because I saw Lorraine also asked a bit about how we can tell them specific tasks that they can do to help us. Yeah.
So what we did already is really putting forward that target for ourselves of having 40% men in our board. That's done. In our advisory board, we have 50% men, and the advisory board is chaired by Hagen, which is here. We make sure that to have men in our events, to also have men as mentor, as ambassador. I think we can go further. And also, as I was also saying, perhaps share some practical tips for ourselves, for our members. How can you actually use this? How can you do this? What to ask, how to network, how to use that buy-in? Because of course, in an organization, if you want to move forward, you will need a lot of mentors, and preferably you would also need a sponsor. And sponsor can as well be a man, and in lots of cases, having a man as a sponsor will be very, very interesting. And then comes the question, how to do this? That a lot of women don't really know. I had to learn it myself as well, asking that help, asking the right question. And also that is something that I really learned, asking for the soft help. So of course, the sponsoring, but also asking precise question, and then thanking that person, be grateful, be respectful, and doing something back as well. And so that's one of the most important things I learned in terms of allyships. Allyships is give and take. This is so important. Lobbying, getting something done, it's about give and take. And allyship, it's not just one-way street of hoping that somebody will help you. It's actually also changing your posture. It's not you asking for help. It's you contributing to realizing something in the company. And that's about your posture.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree.
It's not about me being a helpful person. So it is about engaging and becoming part of the game, but asking for something precise. And that is why I think that transaction is not a bad word. It's not that you are less than the other person. You need something specific, but you are as well ready to give back. And that puts you in a totally different position, which is really very important, because now you are actually acting at executive and at board level, and it's a completely different game.
Cécile, comments, and also Lorraine added on, which I mentioned earlier, that men say they support gender equality, but how do we help them to really take an action? I think Hedwige touched on that. So if you have any additional thoughts to add.
Yeah, I would say that, yes, men are generally good-willing. I mean, it's just a question of, I fully agree with Hedwige that, and like every person, if you're in a situation where you're asked something, you always think, what's in it for me? I mean, it's a natural human reaction. So I think the way to do it, and the way that Hedwige explained that we should change our posture, is not that we are the party that is just asking for help, but it's a mentoring relationship is a two-way relationship, and every person that has been in a mentoring relationship knows as a mentor that they get as much as they give. So I think also men like to be asked something very concrete. Can you do this for me? Or can you do this in the situation? Like, we are more, I think as women, we take a more holistic view of things, but they like to be asked. I remember in one of my boards when I was a CEO, I said, for the replacement of an independent director, I just said, would you consider, at equal talent, would you consider a female candidate, because I feel a bit lonely here as the CEO in this environment? And they looked around and they said, well, why not? I mean, and so it's as simple as that, is identifying what makes sense. Don't bring it as a you know, une revendication. Just say it like you feel. I feel like this, would you do this? And most of the time they're willing. So yeah, a little bit of psychology, I think, with men is necessary.
Great, good advice, good tips. Specifically, you're right. I think the holistic approach of women versus sometimes the direct ask is really for men will be helpful. I think we have time for one more question. Marcella, I turn over to you if you have a question to ask before we go on to our next subject.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a forward-looking question. So Nicoletta asked, first she said, congratulations to EWOB on the 10 years. Which programs are you coming up with to get women prepared, aside from the excellent ones you already have? Anything happening on using other digital channels or tools to facilitate increased visibility, AI, anything in that space?
So I think we can say, Kristen, that the events team and the talent pool team did a great job at trying to increase the communities per country. So that's a very important development within EWOB. Apart from the LinkedIn group where everyone is present, we now have WhatsApp communities so that women themselves, women and men, of course, from a specific country can organize activities, can exchange, so that actually that vibrant community that EWOB is going to disseminate to different countries, and that we really are going to help other communities to act on themselves. We are all volunteering, we have a staff, but a limited staff. So if we want EWOB to thrive and to grow, we have to have a kind of decentralized system as well. So EWOB will continue to organize a lot of things, organize a lot of activities, but we count on our members to also initiate and take activities. And of course, it will be a question of how to balance those different forces. Perhaps Kristen can tell something about it. But of course, this is an organization of women for women, and of course, a lot of male allies. And if I can say something as conclusion, I can only thank everyone that is here present for joining this celebration event. I think we can be very, very proud of what we realized. I also think that we can say that this is an example of the power of women, the power of communities, the power of organizations like EWOB. It has not been done in just one night. It has been done by many, many people around this table, many who are not here today. And so I would like to pay tribute to everyone that was part of this organization and hope that you will continue to support us and be part of the change. Thank you, Kristen.
Cécile, some closing words, any last pieces of advice? Just to note, everyone, we're not closing this session. We're just going to move on to the research topic, which is really critical. And there's some really interesting news that Delia is going to share with us. But before that, Cécile, to close?
Well, I am very proud of the achievements of EWOB over the decade. I'm very confident in the future because of the direction that's given and the involvement of everyone and of the leaders of EWOB. It's my greatest satisfaction. When we created the European Women on Boards, I've always thought that we should never identify to the organization and that the success is measured by the sustainability of the project. And I feel that the sustainability of EWOB is in very good hands. So, yeah, I very much like a quote that says, they didn't know it was impossible, so they did it. So that would be, yeah, let's remain very ambitious. Let's just go for it and make it happen together.
Thank you, Cécile. Thank you, Hedwige. I mean, really a very inspiring session. I hope people really got some tips and some better understanding of EWOB's past, but more importantly, what we're going to do in the future together. For those of you who are new to EWOB or you haven't joined, Chala is writing in the chat how you can find out more, and we hope to see you again. So this is not the end of our discussion about EWOB's future, but we also want to share with you some compelling and most recent information on the data, because again, we talked about how do we convince companies, countries to get involved in more gender equality. Well, a lot of times data, well, I think I'm a data person, I'm a chemical engineer. I think data speaks very strongly as the background. It's not just what we feel, but the data is proving what we need to do and the work that we need to take in the future. So let's go on to another topic, a very exciting topic. I'd first like to welcome Delia Mensitieri. She joined the executive board of EWOB as head of research. I'd like you to get a chance, Delia, to explain a little more about your background and why did you volunteer your time for this role and joining our team?
Hi, thanks, Kristen, for the introduction. And already I was very much enjoying the conversation. So I think that was already one of the reasons why I was very pleased to join. So maybe a bit about who I am. So I'm actually an academic. So I do research on diversity, equity, and inclusion in organizations and how we can actually improve that, and what kind of actions work and what kind of actions do not work. And my specific specialization is on measurement. Most of the time we think that D&I is something soft. Well, actually what we want to do here is to prove actually, no, you need those numbers because those numbers are key to actually start changing. So we don't stay on the perceptions and the emotional level, but that we can actually see, well, these are the statistics and we have something concrete in hands. So that was also my motivation to join EWOB, to make those numbers live, and that we can really go for more women in powerful positions. But second as well, that we can have evidence-based practices on how we can improve those, how we can actually improve having more women and also having more male allies, and that we have evidence-based practices and not on, well, we say in Dutch, not the vingerwerk, so actually just going on our gut feeling.
No, great. And I think, as I said before, and we've discussed, there's many ways to influence, to have people engaged, to have more male allies engaged. Data is definitely one of them, and not always just the gut feel and not all the stories. It's a combination. And I know that you and your team have developed a roadmap for EWOB research for this year and next. Maybe could you share a bit with the audience this work and what next steps that you have planned?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I'm very pleased to hear the conversations as well, because I was going through the chat and I say, so how can we make sure that, for instance, organizations go beyond the pink? So one thing that we wanted to do with the research is having the statistics there. So how many women are actually now in board positions? One, if they're in board positions, how is the positions of power? In what kind of positions are they sitting at the moment? So we wanted to go deeper than just the statistics. We wanted to see where exactly are those women positions. One, and second, do we also see a trickle down to C-level? Do we see also trickle down to other positions of power? That's one thing that we want to do. And so that's the statistic part. Second thing that we also wanted to, that we're going to actually exploring in this report, is going beyond the numbers. So we also wanted to know, okay, this is the situation, but what's behind the situation? So we looked at barriers, for instance, that could actually be in place that could explain the statistics, but we also looked at the strengths of women, of how can we then, using our collective strengths, using our collective capabilities that Cécile as well said so wonderfully, I think, of we are extremely capable. How can we use those capabilities to start deconstructing those barriers? And a third thing is also that we go into what are allies. What exactly can we go beyond the nice words? That I think we still have to meet one man who says, I'm not a real ally. So I think we have to go a bit further to go into actions. So that's the research that we're setting up as well.
No, thank you, Delia, because you saw a lot of the very interesting chat about male allies and how to engage them and how to go beyond the I am a supporter. So I think that the research that you and the team have planned is multifaceted, which I think is nice, because we, as Cécile, you mentioned this. I think the big step ahead for EWOB was when EWOB got the EU grant, which was a very big step, and that also included the Gender Diversity Index, which is really good data highlighting the progress or lack thereof, also convincing many member states to adopt, to move forward with the EU directive. Now we need to continue that good work, but also get down, as Delia said, to the layer below, and in terms of details and motivation. Can you explain, Delia, that EWOB recently entered into one of our collaboration partnerships with Diligent Foundation? Maybe we could mute. Great. which collects data on gender balance and decision-making teams around the world. Could you give us some highlights on the recent data, what it shows in terms of progress or maybe in lack of progress in some cases for gender equality in those decision-making teams?
Yeah. I think what's great about the diligent data that we've received is that we could have access to 1,300 companies all over Europe, and that we could really see the trends. So maybe it's good I can share my screen. So you all have actually a premium.
We have the preview for those who are here. They get the preview.
Okay. So actually, a first thing that we've seen is basically that are already a couple of countries, they are way ahead in the directive. So actually, it's you don't see it on this slide, but we see that, for instance, France, Italy, UK are way ahead, and that Belgium and the UK are closing the gap. But what I found very interesting as well is to look over industries. We often receive the remark of, well, in certain male-dominated industries, it's very difficult to find women. What we find interesting is when we looked at industries level, we saw actually the same trends. We saw that there was still between 40 and 30% of women represented in boards, not actually very, and it was not very linked to a certain industry. I found that quite interesting because there it shows that even in industries where it's an overrepresentation of women, it is not shown in the boards. And in an industry where we actually have an underrepresentation of women, it's the same. So this is more a sign of it's a structural difficulty to get to that 30-40% instead of on country level.
Delia, doesn't it almost comes down to what we were discussing before? The argument is I can't find women that are ready and willing to take on board roles. And what you're showing from this chart, it doesn't really vary that much, information technology versus, utilities. It's all between 30 and maybe 38, 40% at the maximum. So it's not so different. You would expect some industries to be much higher if it was just a matter of finding women. So there's another element there, another challenge that we have to be very aware of.
Yes. Absolutely. For instance, in healthcare, we would have assumed to have way more women because in proportionally, we have way more women working in healthcare. And so the argument that we can't find them doesn't go up in that industry. I would have assumed, in all honesty, to not have 34% in materials because that's a very male-dominated industry, but still they're actually at the same level almost as healthcare. So it seems that it's not about we can't find them. That's actually not the right I think the right barrier. It's more of we find it a bit difficult to include them actually in our board position. Second thing that I also wanted to show that we as a team we found very interesting is to see does it trickle down to positions of power, and there we see a whole difference. So while we see 30-40% from the moment that we start looking at C-level, we see that, like Cécile also said, we see way more men being in C-level positions. So it seems that women, when they're appointed in boards, and it is also very clear if we look at the second last where it says NED, that it's non-executive, well, it's an independent board position. Well, there we have 45% of women. When we look at the executive positions, there is almost no women except in HR, where we could see there is an overrepresentation of women. I find it is well important to say that when we see the directive is working, yes, we see quite a change, but mostly in the non-executive director positions. The moment that we look at executive positions, except HR again, there we still see that men are overrepresented. However, when we looked at country level, for instance, France, where there are implementations and quotas, there we could see an improvement. So it's also a show actually that we get quite a pushback on quotas and on directives. But however, the countries where there are already more stricter ones than the EU, we can actually see a faster change than compared with countries that do not have, that they comply only to the directive or not complying because it's the first time they have to reflect on having a quota there. So for me, it's a sign that actually quota can accelerate change.
And that's a great message also that reinforces the original GDI and the messages that voluntary initiatives don't work. It's the same in anything in business. If you ask people, just kind of do this when you feel like it, it generally doesn't happen. So this is again reinforcing that having a goal and working towards a goal is the way to achieve some progress.
Absolutely, that's something that
there's a question, Delia. What is ADV? In that last chart, Ala asks ADV, and she's asking, is it advisory board?
I think it's someone who was sitting as a chair of an advisory board. So I have to check again.
But it's only three, three.
So it's something very specific.
Specific for a certain company or a certain couple of companies. Okay.
But something that I also wanted to show is the directive is actually changing something. So we looked as well at appointments before the directive and appointments after the directive. And what we can see is quite a change on all the levels. So as well on executive as non-executive directors, we can actually see a change in appointments of women compared to men. So I think, again, this is a very good sign that the directive is going for change.
And do you see you mentioned France, which we know because they put in their own directive. Do you see other progress being made countrywide in a country basis?
On a country basis, for instance, we saw that Belgium is improving. We actually in Belgium, we don't have legislation for sea level, but there we could also see already that it was sparking change on the sea level aspect. So indeed, on several countries that had no legislation on sea level, thanks to the directive, we started seeing a different.
It's kind of trickling down and a trickle down effect. And are there certain countries, because we saw that in the last GDI that we published in January of last year, that there are certain countries that haven't made basically much progress at all or at all. Is it still the case, or do you see every country making some kind of progress based on, I know that the diligent data doesn't cover every country in Europe, but for what you could see, is it moving ahead everywhere? It maybe some slower than others?
I think it's more of that one. What we can see, because we had the team also look at conversations in the countries, in countries such as Poland, where we don't see a lot of change, at least they're putting it on the agenda because thanks to putting numbers, people start comparing. When you put something so clearly out there, well, you have a bit of peer pressure because you see your neighboring countries doing change and you're lacking behind. It also gives power, I think, in the EU to start saying, hey, we don't see a change compared to other countries. So that's a rhetoric that we start seeing, and that was a rhetoric that we would not see before. All of a sudden, because it's out there, people start having this conversation of, oh, I see that we're not being that good, and they start having conversations. So that's a change that we do see. One country that is still lagging behind is Luxembourg. So Luxembourg is lagging behind as well to all the neighboring countries, and we don't see a lot of progress, especially because it's in the financial industries, and normally financial industries, they have quite a higher representation of women, and that's not the case in Luxembourg.
Okay, interesting. There's a question from Christina. How are the Central, Eastern, and Southern European countries providing you with relevant data about their status? Because you feel that those countries, we have data, or we need to actually do more work to get better data?
I think it's the latter. In all honesty, it's also from the diligent data, we do not have a lot of data on Southern countries and Central European countries, which is a pity, in all honesty. So that's also something that we as a research group, we want to improve as well for next year, to have better representation and a better view of organizations in those geographies, because we've seen an indication that it's mostly there as well, that the most work is needed still. So that's also a shout out to everyone present here. If you could help us getting into contact with organizations that collect data in those geographies, we would be very grateful to start a collaboration with them as well.
As you mentioned, Delia, this is the first year we've been in a collaboration with Diligent Foundation, so we're using their database, and they rightly have some, some countries where they don't have a lot of data, and so we will need to supplement that for our next report next year. Delia, would you any other messages you want to share for the audience?
I think from the statistics, that's something very clear. I'm just going to stop sharing because that's also for me nicer so I can see everyone. What we also did is we did a member survey where we asked you actually what you are experiencing, and we did also several interviews. And I think some key messages that we wanted to share as well is women are quite picky when choosing boards, and I think that's a good thing. We see a change in mentality of before, I'm so happy that I can be in a board, that we are now going off, well, I know my worth, I know what I'm capable for, so actually I want to select a board where I can have a position of power and where people can actually listen to me. So instead of looking for a board that women believe they will just be a tick of the box, women are actually actively looking for boards that can increase their capabilities, where they can actually have a change. I find it as well a very important message, and I would also say to all the members, please continue to do so. Look for those boards where you can have a positive message. Because in all honesty, we've seen, for instance, in Italy, that they're very high on the directive. But when we looked a bit deeper, we don't see that on C-level, one. And second, we don't see that as well. We had quite some people from Italy answering in the survey. There we really saw, well, I really don't have a voice in that board. So that's why it's so important that we don't only look at those statistics, but also went a bit deeper to see, okay, where are those women placed?
There's a question from Martine in the chat. Is the data that you just showed based on private companies listed or not listed? So just to give background of where the data is focused.
Yeah, so it was all listed companies. So it used indexes from all different countries. So it was mostly listed. So these were also large companies. So we did not look at SMEs. We don't have data on those. So that's also, so everything that we're saying is for larger listed companies.
The ones that the directive are really applied
Yes.
is applied.
Yeah,
okay.
yes. Yeah.
Marcella is asking, is there any data looking at the correlation with women on board and your ROI business results?
Yeah. So that's something that we've not done in this one, but I can share from my research and as a scholar that indeed there are links, but mostly linked to diversity of thought. So what they found it's not about having more women in boards. What's equally important is that you have two things. Diversity, you have those women, but second, that you also allow them to have different ideas, different perspectives. And if you have that one, then you have indeed better board governance. Like Hedwige also very much said, you have really an increase in governance. And we could also see that those companies are better, they're performing better in volatile times when there is complexity, when there is difficulties. Those were companies that were better in managing that, those difficulties where you needed that diversity of thought.
Thank you. Thanks, Delia. Francesca asked an interesting question. What are you going to do with this research in terms of sharing it and also the country data? Because I know there's a wealth of information and you have a lot more report that you're writing and you're going to publish. Could you tell a little bit about the next steps on the sharing of the key messages and data?
Yeah, so of course, all the data will be written down in the report. It is all publicly available to you. So we'll publish that one in December. So that's already something that we give back to the community to use in your specific environments, your specific contexts, so you can spark that change. Second thing is that we went a bit further than just dryly explaining what we've seen. It was also aimed as a toolkit, so that we could also guide organizations in the how. So if you want to improve more, to have more diversity in your boards, if you want to improve more women and to have more power positions and more diversity of thought, we also gave advice that came as well from the community of how could actually the organizations work better. So also an open call to all of you. If you have certain ideas that you say, actually, I would love to have the report because I have a certain activity in mind where I would like to use it, I need it to amplify certain messages, please feel free to send us a message. We are very happy to support you, to see how we could help you with your event, to also leverage the data. And all the other things. I think it's Sarah from communication is doing a great job to figure out how we can actually leverage the report further.
No, thank you, Delia, for that. Also talking about the local events, because many of our member associations and our partners would like to have or already have had local events. I was in Helsinki in September, which is a fantastic event organized by Hallitus Partner at our member association on our board with Maria. I know Maria's here. And it was a great event talking again about as a bit of a celebration of EWOB, but more importantly, what's the situation in Finland, what's improved, and what can all of these organizations together do to make more progress in Finland. So I think that that's also something that other local events are being planned around, and that you're going to have the data to share with them to be able to enhance the discussion in the local events. Okay. We have questions. Anyone have any questions they want to add in the chat before we close? In the same time, Delia, any last key messages and tips you have for anyone on the call who would like to make an impact in gender equality as an individual or a company that you'd like to add to this discussion before we close?
It's going to be difficult to top Hedwige and Cécile. We already gave very good messages. For me, it's because we talked a lot about networking. Something that came up from the data, it's not only about networking, but it's about how you use that network. We as women, we have the tendency sometimes to be in a lot of network, but where we do not have access to all the information needed to actually get into those board positions. So one advice that I really want to give everyone is to use this network and share information so that everyone knows where their positions open. That was also a request that we really saw in the member survey asking, I would have loved to know where there is a new position open for a board. We have many ears. We know a lot. So please share that with the community so we can really help women find those dream board positions. So that this is not a network where we talk only about the problems, but that we use again our strengths to leverage and to support other women to get to that next level.
Thanks, Delia. And just to add before we close, one point of interest, which will be also announced at our next event on the 5th, is that we are in the process of developing a platform, we call it EWOB Hub, where we'll be able to have any member who wants to put their profile on the hub. We will then be opening it up to recruiters and companies who are looking for positions, because again, it's critical we have a talent pool, but we need to connect the talent pool with the position, just as you said, Delia, with open positions. So I think that's something to be look forward to in the future, the very near future, is something for us as a big next step. Okay, well, I think we have a few minutes to close. First of all, please turn on your camera because we'd like to take a picture of this part one of our two-part celebration. So turn on your calendar, and I think Palin, Chala are going to take pictures. Congratulations, EWOB, smile.
Taking the picture now. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, it was great to see you all. And again, thank you for joining another event with us. And we hope to see you on December 5th. Again, I think, one or two things if you've taken away one or two things to help your company convince having more women in in decision-making, gender equality decision-making, that's helpful. And you'll hear more about the research coming up. And I hope that will also be useful data to convince to make progress in the future. So see you hopefully soon on December 5th. And thank you again for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.